Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep. So before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Get comfortable and relax. Am I the a-hole for refusing and ungrateful to take a $1,000+ gift from my partner because I'll like cooking? About 2 weeks ago, my partner told me he was hosting a Salad Master party at our home. Salad Master is a cookware brand that claims to cook food without added water for healthier eating. He asked if I wanted the cookware, but after a quick Google search, I found it gimmicky and said no, explaining why. So I thought that was the end of it. A week later, while the party was happening, I went out to meet friends. Before I left, I met the salesperson who tried to pitch the pans by saying I'd taste the difference. I smiled politely and left. While cooking at my friend's place, because I love cooking, I got a text from my partner asking if I wanted to buy a pan or pot. Annoyed, I compromised and agreed to a saucepan since I didn't have one. Then, 20 minutes later, he texted me, saying he had bought the entire set for over $1,000. I was frustrated because I had said no, then adjusted to let him get a single pan, and he still bought everything. When I got home, he told me how good the food was, which was fine, but then he brought up the baking soda test. The salesperson boiled water in my stainless steel pan, added baking soda, then did the same with a Salad Master pan. They made the guests taste both, claiming my pan made the water taste metallic, while Salad Master's did not. My partner then tried to convince me my pan was bad. I found it odd and told him it was hard to believe my Le Creuset stainless steel pan would do that. He got upset, saying, "I was there, I tasted it, do you think I'm lying?" That angered me because I wasn't calling him a liar, I was questioning the test. Later, I researched and found that scratched stainless steel can react with alkaline substances like baking soda, making the water taste metallic. The more I read, the more suspicious the whole thing seemed. The next day, he gave me a Salad Master booklet as a gift and suggested I replace my pans. That made me angry. I told him no and tried to explain why, but he dismissed me, pretending to listen while doing other things, saying I'm ungrateful and he has a history of buying me things after I explicitly say no, then getting upset and calling me ungrateful when I don't accept them. To avoid a fight, I've been sleeping in a separate room, but now I'm livid because I just found out he's hosting another Salad Master party. I'm at my wit's end. So tell me, am I the asshole for refusing a gift that my partner bought me? Will I be the a-hole if I send an email to the B-Day girl's mom explaining why my daughter left the party early? My 43F daughter, Annie 9F, was invited to a party at a bowling alley to celebrate a classmate's birthday. Only girls were invited to the party, and about 21, I think it might have only been girls 17, were in attendance. We were about 5 minutes late to the party and arrived at the same time as another classmate, Betty. Due to the long lines, it took Annie and Betty about 10 minutes to get their shoes and to walk over to the lanes. The hostess had reserved 3 lanes next to each other. As typical with bowling alleys, there was 2 curved benches for seating for 4 lanes. When we arrived at the lanes, the other girls' names were programmed into the 2 lanes, and an adult male was programming his name in the 3rd lane. Annie went to the area and was directed to the 3rd lane. I said hi to a few of the other parents and saw that Annie left the area. I asked her where she was going, and she said that she was told to go get a blue ball because it was lighter. I realized that the ball was £14, so I told her I will go look for a lighter ball for her. When I came back with a ball, one of the parents asked if I was bowling, and I said that I was just getting a lighter ball for Annie. As I gave the ball to Annie, I heard the dad of one of the other girls say to Betty that her name is now on lane. As the birthday girl's mom, the hostess Dana, came by, I asked Dana if Annie can also be added to lane 1 or 2, and was told that Annie is in lane 3. I was surprised and walked over to lane 3 to see that Annie was added to lane 3, and the only player on lane 3 was Annie playing with the adult male, who we didn't know, with a bunch of other players named Kid 1, Kid 2, and Kid 3. I then saw Annie sitting by herself. I asked her if she wanted to go to the other bench to join her friends, but she said she was on lane 3 and was waiting her turn to bowl, though the adult male was bowling for the other kids. I let her be, and went back to talk to some of the parents. But 5 minutes later realized she was still sitting alone on the bench, rather than joining her classmates on the other bench for lane 1 and 2. I walked over and asked her again why she didn't join the other classmates, and she said that she felt left out. So I asked her if she wanted to go. She said she did because she didn't want to play with the adult male stranger, so Annie and I walked out. As we went out the door, her friends asked her why she was leaving, and she said she didn't want to bowl with the male stranger. The other parents asked me why we were leaving, and I said that Annie was playing on a separate lane by herself. A few parents offered to have them take turns in lanes 1 and 2, but by that time Annie had walked out. I then took her out for ice cream. After we left, I realized I could have asked Dana to divide the girls evenly into 3 lanes, but by that we had already left. I'm really upset how the hostess thought it was okay to isolate Annie, and I'm glad I didn't just drop her off and leave. Wibta is, if I sent the hostess an email explaining why we left early and how the setup was exclusionary, and that it was improper to have my daughter bowl with an adult male stranger instead of her classmates, will I be the a-hole for not comforting my BF after he didn't like my cooking? Earlier in the day, I told my BF that I was going to make mapo tofu, a dish he's never had before. It is one I like a lot. He told me he's never had tofu before, so I was excited for him to try it. Since we have different cultures and different taste, I told him ahead of time that if he didn't end up liking it, he can order out. Not that it matters much, but he's white and I'm Asian. When I was making the food, he comes into the kitchen and tells me, Taco Bell seems nice right now, to which I tell him I want him to at least eat some of the food I'm making. When I actually made the food, he seemed sure that he wasn't going to like it, as he told me, I'll just try a bite of your bowl. And I responded, why don't you just get a bowl for yourself? He responds with, I told really eat tofu. I was confused because I thought he told me he's never tried it before. When he took a bite, he said, it's good. I just don't like the texture of tofu. So I ate my bowl by myself while he prepared the dog's food. When I'm about to clean up, he asks me, are you mad I didn't like it? I said, no, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I made this. For us. He said, at least I tired it. You're making me feel bad. Fine, I'll just eat it. I was thrown aback because I don't want him to feel forced to eat something he doesn't like. So I responded with, no, it's fine. You can get Taco Bell. I'll just pack this for my sister and I's lunch. He then said, I'll just eat it. You're making me feel guilty. To which I just shrugged. We then got into a long argument with him saying he expected me to comfort him when he expressed himself feeling guilty after the way I acted, my tone of voice. He said he felt like I was guilty tripping him. I felt like I'm not responsible for him feeling that way, just the same way I don't blame him for me feeling disappointed. I just don't know what more there was to say. I told him he's free to get takeout and that I wasn't mad at him for not liking my dish. Maybe I did have a bad tone, but it might be because I was disappointed. Please help me because I have no idea if I was in the wrong or not. Edit. You all provided me a lot of perspectives, mainly saying I'm not in the wrong, but I made sure to take into consideration the ESH comments as well as the YTA ones, despite there not being many of them. More context I mentioned in the comments, I'm 22 and he's 26. No, he's not a child. I would have not made the dish if I knew he didn't like tofu. Same way I don't cook him dishes that include fish, since he dislikes it. He said some other disrespectful comments like, all right, let me try this mama tofu or mabo tofu, before trying it. He was joking, but this could have also affected my mood and I didn't realize it. So after a couple hours after our argument, my BF asks me where I put the leftover mapo tofu and if he can eat it. He didn't say it in a rude or dreading way, but polite and positive manner. I assured him he doesn't need to eat it because I know he doesn't like it, but he clarified that he likes the flavor, just not as much the texture, and that he wants to eat it. He continues to eat while playing on his PC and only finished about half of his bowl before storing the rest. I can tell he really tried to eat, it either because he didn't want it to go to waste or to please me. After a while, I ended up going up to him and apologizing for not taking his feeling into consideration and explained that I wasn't trying to make him feel guilty. Maybe I was being outwardly dreading. I know a lot of you agreed that I was not responsible for how he felt, and that it's up to him to regulate his emotions. I still fully agree with this, but also recognize that this is a partnership, and that although I'm not responsible for his feelings, I need to at least recognize them if I want this to work out. He smiled and gave me a hug. He also apologized for reacting the way he did, raising his voice and escalating the argument. I know a lot of you were telling me to dump him, even some suspecting I am in an abusive relationship and sending me books related to abusive relationships. I do not blame you all, since I shared a small glance of my relationship in a bad moment. It was not reflective of its entirety. Yeah, he can be immature and manipulate sometimes, but he's a good partner, and most of the time tries to communicate and solve our issues. I thank you all for your concerns, but I am very aware of moments when he is being irrational or trying to manipulate me, and I usually call him out or choose not to take his attempts to divert the situation when he is at fault. I am fully capable of standing up for myself when I need to. I also acknowledge that is only my perspective, which is only half of the situation. I am biased. Thank you all for caring. Will I be the a-hole for changing my family's last name secretly while not informing anyone? I, 38F, got married 3 years ago to my husband, 41 Menas. I changed my last name to his immediately following. My relationship with my in-laws was never super, but it was civil until about 2020, when our differences became obvious and were hard to reconcile. They have never welcomed me into their family and never put forth any effort to be a part of our lives. At first, my husband just said things like, "They are like this with new people, this is just how they are." Over time, though, they have not only managed to alienate me, but my husband as well. They have implied I was a gold digger and have called me quite a few unpleasant names. My husband had enough with them during our first year of marriage, and when he went low contact with them, they tried guilt, manipulation, and passive aggressiveness to get him to resume what we call his previous role in the family, being the one to do all the work in the relationship. When that didn't work, they basically cut us out. They never called much before, but now they never call and then act like it's our fault they don't and play the victim constantly. Have BPD, and my new last name just didn't feel like me, especially considering his family. After my diagnosis a year ago, my therapist explained sometimes people with BPD struggle with this, since we struggle with identity as well. So it's been talked about a lot. My husband had suggested we both change our last names. I thought it was an interesting idea. I didn't want my maiden name back because it is hard to spell and pronounce, and not at all common in our country. I liked his last name because it was such a common last name. We talked about this for about a year and settled my grandmother's deceased maiden name. It's commonish, easy to say and spell, and we feel honors my family, who we have to thank for our lovely life today. It was surprisingly easy. We set up a court date, filled out the papers, had a hearing all within a few weeks. Then we changed it on social media. His family found out and is pissed. Some of my family found out and are pissed. They said we had no reason, you were right, what have you. I told all of them it was a decision between me and my husband, and it was not up for debate. On his side, they cut US off and never even talked to us. On my side, no one owns the name, and it left with my grandmother when she died. One of my aunts tried to say I needed their permission. The only permission I would have needed would be my grandma or my father, both who have passed away. My mother thought it was a great idea, and so did my siblings. We are getting bombarded. We are basically grey-walling, but it's not like it was a rash decision. We are both very happy with the change, but the amount of backlash I've been getting has me wondering if we effed up by not announcing it or telling people in advance. Will I be the a-hole for refusing to give my co-worker a ride after he called me his personal chauffeur? I have a co-worker who lives near me, and I've given him a ride to work a few times before. Well, his car is now in the shop, needed to get work done, and he asked for a ride again. Not a big deal. He even asked if I could stop by the store for him to pick up groceries. And again, I didn't mind. I had nothing else going on. Well, earlier I heard him joking about how I'm his personal chauffeur, and he didn't need to rush his car getting fixed. He asked me for a ride again today after work, and I told him no, bringing up what I heard him say. He said I'm overreacting and that he was just kidding. I didn't give him a ride home, and he had to pay for an Uber. Am I an asshole for not giving him a ride home? Or was his joking as rude as I took it? Am I the a-hole because I don't want my half-brothers to come on a trip with my uncle, and because I don't want my half-brothers to come on a trip with my uncle and I, not the a-hole I, 15M, and 3 older half-brothers, twins, Max and Jake, 18M, and Shane, 16M. We have the same mother, but they have a different father. Max, Jake, and Shane's father is very involved in their life, and they live with him every other week. On the other hand, I have a deadbeat absent father that I never see. I have no relationship with half-brother's father. My half-brother definitely do not treat me the same way they treat each other. I have friends who have older brothers who are supportive and hang out with them, and are there for them, and mine are nothing like that. Often when Max, Jake, and Shane are at their dad's, I spend the weekend with my uncle, Mom's brother, because of that my uncle and I are very close. One of the things we do together is watch NASCAR since he's made me a fan. It's our thing. As far as I know, my half-brothers don't watch NASCAR. I've never watched a race with them at least. Next week, Max, Jake, and Shane were supposed to be at their dad's. My uncle was going to take me to the NASCAR race in Atlanta that weekend, just him and I. However, my brother's dad has had to go away on some business trip, I guess, meaning they aren't going to their dad's next week. Since they'll be here, my uncle also invited them to come to the Atlanta race with us. I don't want them to come. When they went to Europe or Florida or skiing or New York or any of the other trips they take with their dad, I don't get invited. They go away with him 2 or 3 times a year. I've never been away because my mom can't afford it. This will actually be my first time on a plane. They get everything. This is one thing I had, just my uncle and I, and he just invited them. Since they're going, I no longer want to go, and I'm considering telling my uncle that tomorrow. When he told me they were coming, he could see I wasn't happy. He knows how I feel about my relationship with them. But he said since they're home, he can't. Not invite them, it wouldn't be fair. But it's not my fault their dad is going away. I know my uncle can't uninvite them now, so I really think I'd just prefer to stay home and not go. Will I be the a-hole if I told my uncle I don't want to go and instead stayed home? This is an update to my original post. Thanks to everyone who answered. After reading the comments, I realized it wasn't my place to ask my uncle not to invite my brothers, as he is also their uncle. Also, if I chose not to go, it would just be denying myself something I really wanted to do and would upset my uncle, which I didn't want. So I decided to go to the NASCAR race. I also decided against saying anything further at that time. The days before we left, it felt like my brothers were being nicer than usual, so that was cool. They added me to their group chat so that it would be easier to keep in contact on the trip, the reason they gave. I roomed with one of my older brothers, Max, in the hotel. On Saturday, we went to the racetrack for the first races. I was getting food when I accidentally cut the line. I thought the people standing in front had already ordered. Someone pointed it out to me and I went to the right spot in line. There was a guy in line who was super mad, going on about how I was a little asshole and only apologized because I got caught, and he walked up to me yelling. And then Max appeared and told the guy to calm down and to stop yelling at me. He kept yelling at me, and Max stood between me and the guy and told him, "If you say another thing to my little brother, we're going to have a problem," and the guy finally backed off. I've never seen Max as mad as he was right then over that guy yelling at, and it meant a lot the way he jumped in. Back in our hotel room that night, I was thanking Max again for standing up for me earlier, and he told me, as his brother, he'd always do that for me. It seemed like the right moment, so I finally took the advice and opened up to him. I told him that I wished me, him, Jake, and Shane hung out more together, and I'd like doing more stuff with him and them. We talked for a long time about our relationship. Max then talked to Shane and Jake, because the next day they both apologized for me having felt left out as well. When we flew back home, Max had told Jake more of what I had said. He asked me if he could first. Jake and I went out on Tuesday and talked about it a bunch, and he kept apologizing for letting me down. I told it was probably mutual, and I didn't act like I wanted to spend time with them, but he told me he was my big brother and should have been better. We've all agreed to do better going forward. Kind of funny that it was a drunk guy yelling at me which got me to open up in the end. Am I the a-hole 34 for stooping to a new low by kicking our neighbor's garbage bins out of the way whenever she 37F leaves it in front of our driveway? Not the a-hole context. New neighbor moved in. She was nice enough at first, but she has a serious problem with how she handles garbage days. I'm not sure how one woman can create so much garbage. She will have her bins out, but it's always overfilling. Many times I've come out of my driveway to go to work to see a pile of spilled over fresh garbage sitting right in front of my driveway after the raccoons got to it, or all her bins blocking my car from leaving. I've spoken to her many times about this, and she always says that she does, and claims it must be getting moved around by the wind or knocked over by raccoons, lol. There is no way in hell all that garbage is getting blown around by the wind, the raccoon part, I believe. But there are locks on the garbage bins for a reason, and if you can't close it because there's too much trash, that's a you problem. Lately, even when I know she's home, she will ignore me at her door. I always back out of my driveway and I will see bins blocking my path. I tolerate moving them out of the way even though it pisses me the fuck off every morning. What I can't tolerate is when raccoons get into her shit, and as I'm backing out, I see piles and piles of fucking garbage blocking my path. I've had to use a shovel to get it out of the way. I've been waking up a bit earlier to move her garbage, and the other day I asked myself why the fuck I am going out of my way to help this stupid idiot. I took a good look at her bins and just kicked them as hard as I could over to her side, and the garbage spilled over to her driveway instead of mine. I've noticed now she is slowly learning to take proper care of her garbage, and sometimes she even puts it on the other side of her driveway. She has been a lot better lately, but not perfect. She sometimes now locks the bin's hinges and keeps it on the other side of the street, but whenever I catch it in front of my driveway, I will kick it back to her side. Told my wife about it and she sighed, "This is so pathetically low of me." She doesn't have to wake up and deal with someone else's shit, so I don't really expect her to understand, or maybe I'm just a POS IDK. I feel like I've done my part being nice. IDGAF anymore. Aita, edit. Hey guys, I see a lot of hate coming towards my wife. And while I appreciate everyone's advice on what to do about her, this is just the way we both speak to each other, and have been speaking to each other since we met. Maybe it's unhealthy, but I think we both also understand there is a level of sarcasm when we speak this way. It's when she doesn't speak like this with me and uses my full name that has me concerned. Edit 2. Wife read my first edit and is quite happy with my response. Thank you guys for indirectly giving me free brownie points. Am I the a-hole for demanding that my fiancé's parents change their plans to have a vacation at the same place as our honeymoon? My fiancé and I have our wedding coming up in April. We had brainstormed for a while on where best to spend our honeymoon. We went over the more popular and well-known places, but then landed on a more offbeat destination that I felt would truly be a great place for us to start our life as a married couple. I've been looking forward to it just being the two of us. I'll know he has a really hectic work schedule, and we were going to make the most out of this. A couple of days ago, he told me that his parents had been impressed by how hyped I was about it and were planning on going there for a vacation too, largely overlapping with our dates. They're staying at the same hotel as us. I was livid. They can go any other time, why now? He said he had suggested that, but his mom said they had taken time off for the wedding too, and it worked well into their plans. Also, that since we're going to be going back, it'll allow them to maybe see us a few times before we leave. I was almost in tears. I was so angry. He tried to reassure me, saying they had promised it'll be two separate things, and they won't be inserting themselves in our honeymoon. They want us to enjoy it, and they'd be doing their own thing. I want to believe it, but I know his mom. I like her as a soon-to-be ML, but she can be very clingy, and routinely laments how far he, and now us, are from them. So I just have a feeling the two plans are not going to be as independent as he thinks they'll be. I vented about it to my parents too. My mom agreed with me that this isn't right. My dad is more on the fence about it. He doesn't think everything is ruined. I've demanded my fiancé make them change their plans. He says he asked them to. They promised to do their own thing. What can he do? Tell them he doesn't believe them and call them liars? I messed up here and said, if that's what it takes. He got quiet. I realized that was too much and sincerely apologized for crossing the line. This has been eating me up. I was envisioning a certain type of honeymoon, and this happened. Am I the a-hole for not reimbursing my co-host for his dish at our potluck? A few weeks ago, my apartment mate asked if I wanted to co-host a potluck with him and another apartment mate. I had a grilled veggie recipe I'd been wanting to try, so I agreed. He would make the main, I would make the side. We ended up hosting about 10 people. The day of, he posted how much his ingredients cost on our apartment group chat, which ended up a little over $200. I didn't post mine, which cost about $10 fast forward to today. He expects me to reimburse him for my third of the expenses for the main. I said I never agreed to that. He said I was the host and that I had to. He never even considered it a discussion. Our third apartment mate paid and is staying out of it. Am I the a-hole for having Dr. Pepper in my water bottle at the gym? Not the a-hole poo modi. 20F. Love Dr. Pepper. I probably drink like a can a day, which I totally know isn't great, but I eat super healthy and go to the gym religiously where this incident took place. Me and my boyfriend, Charlie, 22 me, usually work out together. Yesterday evening, before we went to the gym, I filled up my water bottle with Dr. Pepper. I hadn't had one yet that day and was craving it bad. If I needed actual water at the gym, I was just planning on drinking from the water fountain, so my boyfriend didn't have limited water, because I wasn't bringing any extra. I made sure to tell Charlie this, as he really doesn't like Dr. Pepper, and I didn't want him drinking some from my water bottle. We sometimes will take sips from each other's bottles. He just said, "Okay, no problem," and that he'll avoid my bottle. Fast. Forward to when we were wrapping up at the gym, Charlie had had an intense set and just grabbed the first bottle he saw, which happened to be mine. Before I could even look or react, he was spitting the Dr. Pepper out on the ground. He was spluttering angrily at me and told me it was such a stupid idea to put the Dr. Pepper in my bottle and that I should have yelled to him when he picked it. I told him, I'm sorry that he had a mouthful of Dr. Pepper when he was so out of breath and wanted water, but that I didn't have any time to tell him because he was too quick, and I was focusing on counting my own sets. He wouldn't really take this as an answer and just stormed off, which was super embarrassing as I was the one who had to clean his mess up. By the time I ran out of the gym to catch up to him, he had already messaged me that he left in an Uber. He's only sent me one text since yesterday that we'll talk about my Dr. Pepper thing later. I'm literally so confused, and I just need to know if I was wrong. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give up my college fund to help my parent with their debt? I just started college this year. Ever since I was little, my grandparents set up a college fund for me, and it's the only reason I can afford school without taking on massive debt. My parents always knew about it, and it was always meant for my education. Recently, my parents have been struggling financially due to bad investments and overspending. They sat me down and asked me to use my college fund to help them pay off their debts. They said that since they raised me, it's only fair that I help them now that they're struggling. I said no. I told them I was grateful for everything they've done, but this money was specifically for my education, and I wasn't going to throw away my future. They got upset and said I was being selfish and ungrateful. My mom even cried, saying she never thought her own daughter would turn her back on them. Now my parents barely talk to me. I feel horrible, but at the same time, I don't think I should have to sacrifice my future because of their financial mistakes, aita, for refusing to give up my college fund. Am I the a-hole for telling my pescatarian friend it's her fault she ate meat? I, 23F, went out to dinner with my friend, 25F, over the weekend at a restaurant in our town. She's been pescatarian since she was 14 and is a huge advocate for eating less meat. I am an omnivore, but I respect her lifestyle choices, especially as she doesn't shame me for my decisions. We've never been to this restaurant before, so we were excited to try something new. She ordered a squid dish, and I ordered a beef dish. When our food arrived, we noticed her squid looks a little strange, as it has pieces of what seems like dark meat in it. She takes a bite and then calls the waiter over, asking if there's meat in it. The waiter confirms the wrong item was given to our table and apologizes profusely. He didn't serve us, taking the dish away and promising the food will be remade correctly and taken off our bill. My friend at the time accepts this and says that she understands mistakes happen. I asked her if she was okay, as she seems a little thrown off, understandably, and she says she's fine but obviously disappointed. Her correct dish arrives, and the waiter again apologizes to us, and she seems okay from this point on. At the end of our meal, the restaurant brought us complimentary desserts as an apology, and when we pay, just for my dish and drinks, she leaves. They tip. The next day I have a look at the restaurant on Google and can see she's left a bad review, 1 of 5 stars, where she details how they brought the wrong item, how distraught she is as a result of their mistake, and demanding compensation, even though the item was taken off our bill and we got free cake. I'm not defending the restaurant, as this lack of care is definitely a serious fault, but when the waitress who seated us asked us for any allergies or dietary requirements, she didn't mention she didn't eat meat. She only brought it up after the wrong dish was made. I texted her asking why she left such a poor review, and she said that the mistake was unacceptable. I then told her that it's partially her fault that she ate meat, because we both noted that her dish looked like it had meat when it was first brought out, and that she should have asked the waiter first before eating it. She then retaliated and said, "I was being insensitive," and is no longer replying to me. I just think it's odd that she said everything was fine, and left a tip to then complain on Google. Am I the asshole? Edit 1. I also want to add that we are in the UK, where tipping is optional. There was no service charge already added to the bill, so the tip was entirely her decision. Edit 2. As many of you have suggested, I've posted my own review to clarify what actually happened. Am I the a-hole for calling out my foster career in front of my social worker? I, 17F, have lived in my current foster home for a little over a year. I immediately got bad vibes on the foster carer on the first day. I don't know, she just gave me off energy, though that could have just been me being judgmental. There is another girl who's been living in the same foster home for about 5 to 6 years before me. She is also 17, and for the sake of the story, I'll call her May. We became friends, and she told me before I came that Jane, the foster carer, had showed her my personal file and asked for her opinion about me. Since then, Jane has been chatting the most shit about me to May. She tells me everything. Jane calls me rude, says I'm a bad influence, that I'm disrespectful, lazy, and have no manners, and apparently act like this is my house. Jane likes to rave and brag about how good of a foster care she is and how long she's been in the company. She does a lot of things to make herself look good in front of the social workers. About a week ago, my social worker came over to help me with a housing application, since I wasn't allowed to stay after 18 because Jane wouldn't get money to take care of me. Jane said those exact words to May, by the way. During the meeting, my social worker said something that completely set me off. I had to go at Jane, saying that she's a useless foster carer and that she doesn't do anything and that she doesn't care. A week before the meeting, I was really ill with a chest infection, and not once did Jane ask if I was okay. Her daughter made me food and tea for the entire week, while Jane said literally nothing to me. After about 4 days, Jane asked if I wanted cough medicine, and I said no. She never asked how I was doing. I brought this up during the meeting and told my social worker how Jane never asked how I was doing when I was ill. Jane immediately got defensive and went into the other room. She got the medicine just to prove a point that she had bought medicine for me. I also brought up how she actively chats shit about me in the house. I never said where I got the source from. I just said I could hear from upstairs. She called me a liar and swore to God that she would never do that. I also made a point that on my birthday, she didn't say happy birthday to me until later on in the day. She didn't get me a card. She didn't get me a gift. She didn't get me a cake. I also said that when it was May's birthday, everyone went out to Nando's, while I didn't get anything. No one asked if I wanted to go out for my birthday, to which Jane responded, "Oh, do you want to go out this weekend?" I said no because it defeated the whole purpose, and it also proved that she was trying to put on a show in front of the social workers. After my social worker left, we had a conversation and sorted things out, as I was going back to my room. I heard her on the phone to my social worker, telling her everything that we had just spoke about, furthermore proving my point that she's only in it to make herself look good. Am I the a-hole for not going to my sister's wedding because her venue is not wheelchair accessible? My 24F sister, 30F, is getting married soon. I'm very happy for her, and there are no issues between the two of us. She really wanted to get married in a specific location and she got it, which is great. But that location is pretty much not accessible to wheelchairs. I have a significant disability, paraplegia, and cannot move at all without a wheelchair, so going there would be tough. She told me that I could be carried up any stairs and then stay at the tables, but that's not something I'm comfortable with. Getting carried is very uncomfortable and dangerous, especially when done repeatedly by someone that isn't used to it, and I really don't want to have to be carried to the toilets at a wedding full of strangers, or even worse, have an accident. Then I also wouldn't expect people to just sit with me while the celebrations are going on, but the idea of sitting there and watch for hours feels wrong, especially that after a few hours sitting hurts a lot, and skin becomes a concern. But I wouldn't ask someone to leave the wedding just for me. I'm not upset about the fact that they picked that venue. It's their day, and I don't expect them to plan it based on my needs. But I also don't think she understands that it's not as easy as she thinks. There are so many things that could go very wrong. I intend to get them a nice gift and propose to maybe spend quality time together, afterwards, before. One of my cousins told me that it's just one day, and that it's very important for my sister, so I should make an effort and get out of my comfort zone. But I feel like endangering my health isn't as simple as getting out of my comfort zone. So, will I be the a-hole for not going? Am I the a-hole for forcing a woman to return the bag of cans she stole out of the back of my truck? Not the a-hole. I was out yesterday running errands, and I had a really big transparent bag of cans I was going to take to the bottle drop in the bed of the truck. I stopped to get lunch first at a place with Sub and Way in the name, and when I came back out, the bag of cans was gone. So I drove towards the bottle drop, and sure enough, I saw a woman heading that way and lugging my bag of cans on the sidewalk. I pulled over, and she clearly recognized my truck. I accused her of stealing the cans from my truck. She denied it, until I said I was going to call police. And the restaurant I was at likely caught her theft with their CCTV. So she could either admit she stole from me and return the cans, or I would call the cops. She got angry and told me money was tight right now, and it was just a bag of cans. I told her that she didn't get to steal from me and play the victim, so it was either return the bag or I would call the cops. She tried to say the cops wouldn't give a damn about a bag of cans, so I told her we should find out. I was about to start dialing when she dropped the bag, then told me to go F myself. She walked away ranting and saying I have no sympathy. I told my friends about this later, and one of their girlfriends absolutely went off on me. She went on a rant about how I didn't know what kind of situation that woman might have been in, and she could have been homeless for all I knew, so I should have just let her have the damn cans. We had a big argument and she left furious. I was pretty sure I was in the right before, but not anymore. ATA for forcing that woman to return the bag of cans she stole from me. Edit. For the record, the bag had over $30 worth of cans in it. It was a really big bag. Edit 2. It was a huge transparent bag made for covering a mattress, so a lot of cans. Am I the a-hole for telling my girlfriend to suck it up around my clown figurines? Me, 26M, and my girlfriend, 24F, have been dating for 2 years. Since we started dating, she's known that I love clowns. I have several porcelain clowns displayed around my house on walls, hung from the ceiling on little swings and on shelves. I adore these weird little creatures. Well, last week I bought 2 Venetian masks from the thrift store, and they're in great condition. I got them for a decent price. 2. She hates them. She said they're creepy and give her bad vibes, whatever that means. I told her that I would take down the masks when she's staying the night, but I'm not getting rid of them. She told me that was fine. Yesterday she got up and told me that we needed to talk. She told me that she's sick of seeing my weird decorations and clown toys everywhere, that they're ugly and creep her out. I asked her where this was all coming from because she has never mentioned my clowns before, and she said me bringing those ugly fucking masks into our home was her last straw. And my obsession with clowns was charming before, but now it's just disturbing. I told her that I would take down the masks when she was over. But 1, this isn't our home, it's my apartment. And 2, she's known about the clowns for years, and to try to stop me from decorating my place how I please is controlling. She told me either get rid of some of them or we're done. I told her to just suck it up while she's here, and if she can't, then I'll come to her place every week. She didn't like that answer and called me a child before leaving. I texted her to apologize for telling her to suck it up about the clowns, but she hasn't responded to me. So, am I the asshole for telling her to suck it up about my clown figurines? Edit update. I wanted to clear up some things I saw in the comments. I had a small collection started by my grandparents when I was a baby. That's where I got my first swing jester. The collection has grown in the last 2 years to expand to commons decor and not just dolls. For the update, she saw the post. She read the comments and called me today. She wasn't too happy about being called the asshole, but she apologized for being controlling. Turns out she wanted to see if I'd get rid of my collection if it meant keeping her. Like it was some relationship test. Note, she did really hate the Venetian masks and didn't like that they are hanging above my bed. I told her that if it came down between her needing me to get rid of them, sell them for expenses, then I would, of course, do that. But I'm not just going to get rid of my collection because someone says so. She asked if we could move on from this, and I told her no. I don't like that she tried to test my love by asking me to get rid of my collection. She left. We're officially broken up now. On the bright side, I can fill my house with more clown dolls. I even found a music box one online that I might get. Thank you everyone for helping me figure out that I wasn't in the wrong. And to those saying I'm a serial killer for owning clowns, I've read quite a few comments from people collecting dead things, so I think I'm in the clear on that. Am I the a-hole for telling my autistic brother to quit correcting me? Hi, I'm using an old throwaway ACC for this because I am really unsure how people will react and would not like to deal with potentially strong negative reactions for any longer than a few days. I'll have this AC open for the next few days to answer questions or reply to comments. Hope you'll understand. Anyways, I, 23F, have a bachelor's degree in psychology. Psychology also happens to be my autistic brother's, E14 special interest. I was visiting my family this past week, and my brother and I have been chatting about interesting psychology things a lot. However, he likes to use social media as his prime source of information, which is fine as long as you do more research before believing and repeating things. But he tends to just believe anything he hears without fact-checking, especially if it's something that intrigues him. So it happened multiple times where he'd throw me a fun fact that was false, or he'd correct me on something I was telling him about with misinformation. And I'd always been super gentle correcting him and reminding him to double-check his information. Even though I did find it quite annoying, I never was harsh with him. But last night at the dinner table, we were talking about the structures of the brain, how psychology and medical things overlap. The conversation was mainly between my mother and I, as she's a doctor and could speak for the medical part of this, while my brother was just tuning in. We were talking about strokes and how it affects the brain. I began explaining to my father about the left and right brain and how they control opposite sides of the body when my brother stopped me to say that I was wrong and that it's the opposite way. I once again gently corrected him, but he was insistent that he was correct. I reminded him that I was the one with the degree in this topic and he dropped it. Later after dinner, my parents, brother, and I were in the living room watching a movie that was on TV. During one of the commercial breaks, my brother brought up the left and right brain thing again, going on about how I was supposedly incorrect. I was really just done with the topic and was getting a little tired of being constantly corrected with misinformation. And I do not think I said this in any aggressive or rude way, but my exact words to him were, "I'd really appreciate if you'd quit correcting me when you're incorrect. Your source of information is random people on the internet. My sources are textbooks, experimental documentation, and the DSM-5. My brother had then stormed off to his room upset by what I had said, and my mother had told me I should have just let him have his way because he's autistic and just a kid. And in no way was I trying to attack my brother or be selfish and full of myself. I genuinely just wanted him to have the correct information, but the constant correcting began to get on my nerves a little bit. Am I the a-hole for not giving back $7,000 from a vacation reimbursement so my brother can pay vet bills from his dog? Last summer, a family vacation was planned for my family, M40, wife, and 2 kids. My brother's family, M33, wife, 1 kid, and our parents. The plan was to go to Maui in May 2025. It's easily the most expensive trip any of us have been on. A fishing trip with Dad was booked, a very expensive VRBO was booked, and final payment occurred last month, and at that point could not be cancelled. These shared costs were put on my credit card, and I was fully reimbursed by all parties for their share. Last week, my brother's black lab had a severe health issue. The dog was 6 years old, and unfortunately it passed. I got word of it and sent my condolences. A few days later, I got a phone call from my brother. Essentially, he went all out trying to save the dog and has a significant vet bill coming his way. He informed me that him and his family are backing out of the trip. He asked for his money back that he paid me. Needless to say, a disagreement occurred between us. He thinks because he cancelled, he should be reimbursed. My family and our parents will still be going. The trip can't be changed at this point. But I'm not reimbursing him. I'm not about to pay another $7,000 out of my pocket. I told him absolutely not. He's called me an asshole and threatened small claims court. It's been a pretty toxic last few days. He refuses to consider going sighting, finances emotional distress from the dog, and he doesn't want to be around me. Am I the asshole here? Am I the a-hole for leaning on a nearby wall after being denied use of gym equipment by a woman doing supersets? So my apartment building has a small exercise area, including a cable crossover machine, an adjustable bench, dumbbells, some treadmills, and a small side room for yoga or other bodyweight kettlebell exercises. The gym was empty this morning, except for one woman doing row exercises on the cable crossover machine. I noticed that she had placed her phone next to the bench with a couple of dumbbells. For context, I'm a tallish guy and she's shortish and appears non-binary, which is fine by me. I'll refer to her as she here because I don't know her pronouns or how she personally identifies. I specify this because it seems like that plays into the dynamic from her perspective. Can I use this bench? I ask. No, she replies. I'm doing supersets. I was a bit taken aback. There is room for 2, maybe 3 people in the resistance weight training area, and she was using every piece of equipment. Not sure what to do, I lean on a nearby wall and start looking at my phone. I'm a bit miffed, and I look up every so often to see when she'll be done. She takes her earphone out and says something to the effect of, "Are you just going to stand there?" And we get in a big argument. I say something to the effect of, "What else am I supposed to do? You won't let me work in. I don't want you up in my space. Go do something else," she says. "So I can't do pull-ups on the cable crossover." "While you're using the bench," I reply. "No, I don't want you up in my space," she says. "That's just bad etiquette," I reply. It then continues like this for a bit. I accuse her of being rude. She accuses me, verbatim, of using my male privilege. Eventually, she finishes her sets and leaves. In every gym I've worked out at, it would be considered rude to bogart multiple pieces of equipment while others have to wait. I lived abroad for years before this. Is this still the case in US gym culture? Aita for leaning on a nearby wall and waiting rather than going and stretching or running on the treadmill. Am I the a-hole for publicly telling my ex-co-worker that I don't like them? I, 32F, ran into an ex-co-worker, Sarah, 31F, at a bar while I was out with friends celebrating my birthday. We worked together for 2 years at a fast food restaurant. I left this job in January 2025. She was a shift lead, and I've never liked her. I didn't like her management style or her personality. She came up to me at the bar, and we had a 10-ish minute conversation. I thought it was cordial and polite. She was mostly asking me questions about my new job. She asked if I would recommend her for a job at my new company. I got a job at a call center, nothing glamorous. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with that. She brushed it off with a bad joke. I ended the conversation and walked to the table my friends were at, and Sarah follows me. I didn't notice until I got to the table and she sat down next to me. My friends introduced themselves, and I, without thinking, said something along the lines of, "I don't like you. Can you please leave?" Have autism, and I could tell that was not the correct thing to say. Everyone seemed uncomfortable, and Sarah was visibly shocked and upset. My friends were shocked and confused. They assumed that Sarah was a friend or someone I invited to the table. They had zero context of who Sarah is. Sarah made a scene and told me that I was rude, a bitch, and a bunch of other things. She said that I embarrassed her. She embarrassed herself by following me to my table uninvited. And yes, she knew it was my birthday. I do feel bad and know that I could have formulated a polite response. But she's a former co-worker, and an unpleasant one. I have many stories about her, but the worst examples is that she made jokes about my autism and deafness multiple times. She is fake nice, and her friendship style is bullying people. She has a really icky vibe. I don't know what Sarah wanted from me. I wasn't going to hang out with her, especially not on my birthday. So am I the a-hole for telling her bluntly that I don't like her? Edit. I forgot to mention how my friends reacted after Sarah left. They were really upset that she called me a bitch and collectively told her to leave. Sarah left quickly, and I told them who she was. They've heard stories about Sarah for years. None of my friends thought I was an asshole. All of them were comforting and validating. We ended up leaving the bar within the hour because I was overstimulated and felt so uncomfortable being at the bar. We went back to my apartment and hung out for a bit there. The reason I thought I was an asshole is because I've been trying to be better about social situations. My friends are used to how I communicate and are biased. When I was reflecting on the situation, I was thinking of better ways to tell Sarah to leave. That wouldn't have resulted in a scene or being berated. Thank you to everyone who took the time to read my post. I can't possibly respond to every comment, but I have read them all. Am I the a-hole for calling the police on a 2-year-old child running around my neighborhood unsupervised? This happened hours ago. Some little kid was outside playing with my boys in a suburban neighborhood. He was 2 years old, couldn't even talk yet. If I had to guess, he probably had only been walking for 8 months. He was that young. He was out there with his cousin's sister, who was only 7. She didn't know how she was related to him when I asked, "Is that your brother?" I have no idea who either of these children are. I've seen the sister-cousin before in the neighborhood, but where she lived or what her name is, I couldn't tell you. So I called the non-emergency number and told them, "Hey, there's this 2-year-old little boy out here without an adult, and his 7-year-old sister. What do you want me to do?" And the dispatcher told me to keep them there, and they would send an officer out. She asked me to stay on the phone until the officer got there, and while waiting they tried to leave, so I told the dispatcher that, and she said she wanted me to keep them there so the officer could talk to the kids' parents. So I asked if they would stay, and they did. The officer finally showed up, and right when he did, our neighbor came out and was like, "Why did you call the police? This isn't a police matter. This child is not my neighbor's child. I had until tonight." A good rapport with my neighbor, so I knew it wasn't theirs. I was like, "Ma'am, this boy can't even talk yet, he's so young," and she started screaming at me, saying I should have taken him into my house and kept him safe. I said, "I'm not taking some 2-year-old kid into my home without the parents knowing. I'm a 32-year-old male." She kept screaming at me, saying, "We take care of the kids in our neighborhood. If it was your kids, I would do the same. You let them run around without you out here. What if you were miles away and you found out that someone called the police on your kids?" Which isn't true, because my kids hate that I only let them outside if I'm with them. She said I'm a bad person because I'm treating it like he's neglected. She told the officer that she will handle it and started walking the boy home. I'm dumbfounded and embarrassed. Like, what the fuck was I supposed to do? Just let this little kid run around the neighborhood? The cars use our street as a drag strip because it's so straight and long, and this kid couldn't even form words, he was that young. The officer just let her leave with the boy and didn't even go talk to the parents. The whole neighborhood came outside to see what was happening because this lady was screaming at me. So am I the asshole? Am I the a-hole for giving my Bill his favorite cookie when he was being rude? Not the a-hole. So this whole thing is a bit confusing, hence why I am here for some advice. My 17F oldest sister's 25F husband, let's say SpongeBob, is, well, one of those people who would call themselves as just brutally honest, but are actually kind of rude. My sister doesn't mind, and many times has to act as a peacemaker whenever SpongeBob makes a snide remark that causes tension in the family. However, he went too far when my other sister, 23F, told the family that her fiancé cheated on her with his co-worker, to which SpongeBob went, "I am so sorry, he is wrong to do that, but BF, you do look different from what used to, and maybe he lost attraction." Now my sister is struggling with PCOS and has gained weight recently. She is obviously very self-conscious about it, and hence started crying after hearing such remarks and left shortly after. My oldest sis, of course, tried to diffuse the situation and told that he meant no harm and just the way he is. My parents were very angry, and for a few months were low contact with my oldest sis, but eventually everyone forgave each other. I didn't like how again and again our family had tension because of it, so I came up with an idea. SpongeBob loved choco chip cookies that I make, so I made many small cookies, filled them in a jar that I secretly named Prick Pacifier, and later, whenever he would say something rude, I would open the jar and give him a cookie saying, "Here's your peace offering." Every time that would happen, everyone would burst out laughing and he would shut up. It's been some time and he hasn't made any snide remarks. But yesterday, my sister texted me how SpongeBob feels disrespected and they won't come for dinners if I don't stop giving him cookies. To that I replied, "Here, you need a cookie too, don't be a prick, have a cookie." She called me names and blocked me. My family finds it hilarious, but now I think I might have gone too far. Aita TLDR. I might have gone too far by giving cookies to SpongeBob. Update. Okay, so I think for now this situation is sorted somehow. Thanks everyone who commented, because for a moment I did think I went too far, lol. Okay, so after I got blocked, I told Mum about it, and she said she would talk to my oldest sister and asked me to stay away from the matter for now, but reassured me everything will be fine. IDK what exactly happened, but my sis 23F told me later about it. Apparently my oldest sis vented about the whole thing to our cousins, we all are very close, and from there many people from our extended family also found out about the cookie story. They all formed a group chat that included my cousins, both my sisters, my mum and my aunts. I wasn't included as the adults wanted to discuss the matter on their own. Well, they all basically shared their own experiences when SpongeBob was rude to them as well, like when he said that one of our cousins' wedding was sort of tacky, or when he was criticizing my other cousin because she didn't know how to cook, so her husband does most of it. There were a lot more things which were being told and my oldest sis, let's call her Buttercup, had no idea of. They all found the cookie story hilarious too, and even said that they all will keep small cookie jars at their homes just in case. Well, I think Buttercup was sort of embarrassed because she said she will have a chat with SpongeBob, and later he came to the group chat and apologized. IDK how genuine that was, but oh well. He even texted me and told that even though he is still hurt but understood where I was coming from, and I can now stop giving him cookies that way. I apologized too, out of respect, and offered him the cookie jar, but this time as an apology. He said he will accept the peace offering. My sis unblocked me and said she was sorry for lashing out. I loved the idea that someone told about the few cupcakes and my cousins, and I decided that it's prob what we gonna make if he acts brutally. Honest again because, oh well, who won't like a lil cupcake? Am I the a-hole for telling my sister and Bill it's their fault their son doesn't speak to them? 53F. Have a sister. 55F. I'll call her Caroline. She has been married for 30 years to her husband Richard, 58M. When they married in the 90s, they planned to have children. However, nature had other plans for them, and my BIL couldn't have children. The doctors confirmed the impossibility, and this devastated them. After weighing their options, they chose to go through infertility treatments with donor sperm. I also must note that my sister is a controlling person, and my BIL thinks he knows everything. Fast forward a few years, and my sister and BIL had 2 sons through this process, both of whom have different donators. And as science grown with DNA, I advised my sister to tell the children when they were young of how they came to be, and just be honest with them. I was met with harsh backlash, telling me to mind my own business, and that under no circumstance are her sons to find out. I would continually bring it up on occasion until one nasty fight where my Bill told me I was an uneducated idiot who knew nothing about this subject. Then I gave up and never spoke to them about it again. Last year, Caroline's older son decided to take a 23andMe test and discovered that my BIL is not his biological father. This caused a massive uproar in my sister's family. My nephew told them he always knew something was wrong and wanted to find the truth. After months of back and forth fighting about my sister and Bill's betrayal of trust, per my nephew, He has now cut contact with his parents. I'm connect with him through social media and will not do anything to risk losing this contact. Last week my sister called me sobbing because the birthday presents she sent to her son were returned with a note that said, "Do not contact me again," from my nephew. After listening to her for 30 minutes, I got tired. I tried to hang up, but she lashed out and asked why I wasn't supporting her. I told her the truth, that she ignored my thoughts for years. I told her I warned her that science was catching up with her lies, and she should have told the kids when they were young so they could process it better. She called me heartless and a monster for not giving her help or trying to persuade my nephew to speak with her. I told her that I would not do this for either her or BIL, that this situation is their fault, and that they need to figure out how to live with the consequences or find a way to fix their relationship with their son. It was then my Bill got on the phone and called me a bitch and hung up on me. My mother and father got involved and told me that a good sister wouldn't want this type of family tension to continue and that I needed to step up and help my sister and her son to speak to each other. I refused because I won't risk my one connection I still have with my nephew, so aita for not helping my sister and BIL fix their relationship with my nephew and telling them it's their fault.